for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K,
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida TV. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Matt Ohayon with you on the Sick Podcast. I'm back. That's right. It's the Hebrew Hammer. Back with you for another Friday evening. Crazy busy week for the Montreal Canadiens on the ice. Some news off the ice, which is nice. It's always nice to see Kent Hughes address the media. We're going to break it all down soon, but let's take care of a little bit of business first. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Energy Transportation Group has been named by the Financial Times as one of the America's fastest growing companies in 2023 and have been recognized by the Globe and Mail as the top growing Canadian company for 2 years in a row. They work with some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies providing end-to-end logistics services. Join a winning team and check out Energy's career page for available opportunities. We're also brought to you by Playground with over 30,000 square feet of new gaming, dining, and entertainment space. It's time to readequate yourself with Playground. World-class sushi, AAA steaks, live shows, and a brand new poker floor, and so much more. Located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes away from downtown Montreal. Playground. Experience the strip without the trip. And of course, by La Bite TB Beer, brewed in Quebec and a winner of a dozen international awards. La Bite TB offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. La Bite TB, embrace your true nature. Oh, and I forgot, we have a new sponsor. We're excited to welcome Accent Insurance Solutions as a new sponsor of the Sick Podcast. You know, all insurance isn't created equal, and you know where to find the right solution for you. Accent Insurance. Accent doesn't sell insurance. They shop insurance for you to find the right product, right on the money, whatever your insurance needs, home, auto, or business. Call the Accent team today at 514-3636-366. It's on the screen. It always messes me up. It's okay. And get the right solution at the right price. Visit their website at accentinsurance.com. Okay. Last time I spoke to you guys, I was very pissed off with the Canadiens' performance. The last time I spoke to my guest, he had hoped that I would be happier by the time I would talk to you guys, and I was even more pissed off. But then Saturday happened where the Canadiens put up a very, very good fight against the Edmonton Oilers, lost in overtime. What can you do? And then, hey, beat the Colorado Avalanche. How about that? That's what you could do to make people feel good. 4-3 on Monday. I was at the game. It was a very exciting one. Beat the New Jersey Devils and then lay an absolute egg against the Ottawa Senators. Let's talk about it. Kent Hughes also spoke to the media, like as I said this week. Let's talk about it with my usual Friday guest, Mr. Stu Cowan. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing just about as good as the Canadiens, you know, like not too much to complain about at the moment. Could be better, but hey, beggars can't be choosers. So let's take it back from last week. Like the Canadiens, they play those two games against Philadelphia and San Jose, and it's funny because, you know, like at that point, I was still mentioning the P word, you know, not by them being a playoff caliber team, but just by proxy of the way the East is going this year. Turns out with the results they got this week, they would be just on the cusp of a playoff spot had they won those two stinkers of games last week. Do you have an explanation for the way this team plays one week to the next?
Yeah, young team, rebuilding team, inconsistent. I mean, they haven't won 3 games in a row all season. They haven't lost more than 4 in a row all season, if you want to look on the bright side that way. So they're just really inconsistent, and back-to-back games are hard on a young team, and they haven't had much success in back-to-back games this season. And this was another case of that. The fact they can beat the Colorado Avalanche shows that when they're firing on all cylinders, this team can compete against any team in the league, but they don't fire on all cylinders every game, and they don't do it. They do it maybe 60% of the game. They the Canadiens need to work extra hard to win games. They just can't turn it on. They don't have the talent to turn it on, and the Toronto Maple Leafs can do, right? The Leafs can be losing 3-0 and decide, okay, we're going to start scoring goals, and they have the talent to do it. The Canadiens don't. It takes a full team effort. They didn't have that last night. They had a lot of sloppy play, a lot of giveaways in the neutral zone. Caden Primo wasn't great in nets. Didn't get a lot of help, but it was just one of those games that showed, you go back to the golf tournament before the season, and you remember Jeff Gorton didn't want to say the P word, right? Management didn't think this team was going to make the playoffs this season. And that's before they had all the injuries. When you throw in all the injuries, it's actually surprising they are where they are. They're 4 points out of a wild card spot going into that game against Ottawa. And from management's perspective, I don't know if they think making the playoffs this year is the best thing for them either. I think they're everything they're doing is looking towards the future, including the 3 goalie system. And management, the players want to win every game. That's what they're made for. But I honestly think management, and Jeff Gorton didn't come out and say it at the golf tournament, but he didn't want to say the P word. And I think as this rebuilding process goes, management might feel they're better off not getting in the playoffs and getting another high pick than they are getting in the playoffs and getting blown out in the first round, which is likely what would happen. But, kudos to Marty St. Louis. This team, they haven't had a whole bunch of stinkers, right? Unfortunately, they've had one against the worst team in the NHL, and they've had one against the worst team in their division within a week. But they've also played some solid games in between. But again, a young team, they're going to be inconsistent, and those back-to-back games, especially on the road, are really hard. And we saw that against Ottawa last night.
Yeah, I wonder, though, do they just play? It feels like it, at least when they play a team like a Colorado. New Jersey, you would say about them, you would say this about them. You'd put them in that class last year. Unfortunately, they haven't been getting the goaltending they need, because they've certainly been getting the offense that they need. You would say that they play kind of fearlessly against these teams, and they play very structured. I find, like against the Edmonton Oilers, they were coming in on it was a 9-game winning streak at that point for them into the Bell Center. And, the Canadiens had them on their heels at points. It almost feels like there's a maturity level that they know to respect their opponent that is, highly touted, and they have those games. It's like they have those games circled on their calendars. But when you have a team like Ottawa, it can't be a matter of, we're just going to waltz in there and we're going to beat them. We're better than them. Like, it can't be that.
No, the thing is, the Canadiens need really good goaltending to win also. And if you go back to 2 previous wins, Jake Allen was really good, and Sam Montemo was really good. And last night, as I mentioned earlier, Caden Primo wasn't really good. Those first 2 goals to the blocker side. And you go back to the game against Florida when he got beat 5 times to the glove side, and you wonder if teams are almost reverse psychology on him now. Him thinking they're going to shoot high glove side, and instead they're shooting low blocker side. He had some rebound control issues on one of the goal. He got cut out of his net a little bit. As I've said before, there's reasons that Caden Primo was a 7th round draft pick, and not too many 7th round draft picks even make it to the NHL. He's got there now. And from Ottawa's standpoint, I don't know, Michael Andlauer, Montreal native, self-made billionaire, paid $950 million US for the team, grew up as a huge Canadiens fan, was part of the ownership group of the Canadiens before he bought the Senators. He had a 10% stake. The game story I wrote last night, nobody was happier with that win, I'm sure, than him. And you wonder if the Ottawa players, maybe inside their heads, were going, this guy just spent $950 million for our team, and it seems like he's going to be a good owner. Maybe we should try and beat the team that he used to be part of. Maybe that factored into it, but Ottawa came to play, and the Canadiens didn't come to play last night. It was basically as simple as that.
Yeah, it's there's not much else to really dissect out of that game. I think I turned on the game Game started at 7:08. I turned it on maybe at 7:30. I waited till I'll be honest with our listeners and viewers. I waited till Jeopardy was over. I turned it on at 7:30, and I'm seeing the shots were 16-3.
Yeah,
and I'm like, man, it's you're not. So the 3 goalie system is not helping Caden Primo.
no.
He needs to do some work on his own. But, I mean, the team in front of him, like you said, you got to help him out a little bit.
Yeah,
forget goal support. How about start with, you're having trouble scoring goals? Forget the goal support for a second. Like, show some pride in front of him.
Well, how about not playing so much time in your own end either? And there was a whole bunch of offensive rush. They coughed up the puck so much in the neutral zone, and Senators were coming back at them in full speed. And the first 2 goals, I was, skating in full speed and beating him to the blocker side. So, and the 3 goalie system, it hurts him, Primo, more than the other 2 goalies, I feel. Jake Allen's a veteran. He's been around a long time. He was brought in here to be the backup to Carey Price and maybe play 20 games a year. He was a backup role when he was in St. Louis. He's used to not playing all that often. Sam Montembeault also is used, from his history, he was used to not playing a lot. Caden Primo, played a lot in university. He played a lot in the AHL, and he's not getting enough starts. He's doing a lot of extra work with Eric Raymond, the goalie coach, but nothing replicates game action. And it's hindered his development this year. But going back to what I said earlier about how Canadiens management, I don't think they expected to make the playoffs this season. I'm not even sure if that's a goal they have. But everything they're doing this season, and Kent Hughes sort of made it clear at his news conference, everything he's doing right now is for the future. It's nothing to do with this season. Like, they're not going to go to a 2 goalie system and play Sam Montembeault every game because they think they might get into the playoffs that way. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. That's not part of this management team's plan. And their plan also is they don't want to give up Jake Allen for nothing, and they don't want to lose Caden Primo for nothing on waivers. And Kent Hughes is listening to trade offers, obviously. I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Allen is not traded a 1-for-1 deal. I wouldn't be surprised if he's part of a package deal, whether it involves some of the Canadiens' young defensemen also, maybe some of the 22 draft picks they have over the next 2 years. But everything Kent Hughes is doing and Jeff Gorton is doing is for the future. It's not for this season. They're not trying to get into the playoffs this season. That's not the goal. So, as Hughes said at his news conference, this 3 goalie system could go the whole season. If he doesn't get it, what he thinks is a good trade value, a good asset management value for trading. I'd be surprised if Allen's not the goalie that they trade. Maybe he'll figure there'd be a better trade that he can make in the offseason. And if he's going to get more value in the offseason, then he'll wait and they'll go with the 3 goalie system. But he also made it clear it's management's. I get people on Twitter. Why is Marty St. Louis playing him? What's Marty St. Louis doing? This has nothing to do with Marty St. Louis. Ken Hughes made it clear it's a management decision to carry 3 goalies. He's not telling Marty who to put in net, but he's telling him you got to play all 3 guys. So St. Louis got to figure out a schedule. And Montembeault is getting the majority of the starts now, and Allen and Primo are sort of rotating as the backup role starts. But going forward, even Kent Hughes didn't even want to anoint Montembeault as the number 1 goalie at his news conference. He said if he continues to play the way he is, he'll get most of the starts going the rest of the way. I'd be surprised if he doesn't make a trade by the trade deadline, but I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't either, because it's all about, this management team has a plan in place, and that plan didn't include making the playoffs this season. It probably doesn't include making the playoffs next season. This is only the second full year of a rebuild. They're looking long-term, and as they've said right from day one when Gorton and Hughes took over, they want to have a team that's not just going to make the playoffs every year, but be competitive, be a team that's competitive in the playoffs every year. You look at the Boston Bruins are like that, right? They're in the playoffs every year. They're competitive every year. That's the kind of team they're trying to build. So they're not going to do little patchwork moves here. They're not going to trade Jake Allen for less than what Ken Hughes thinks he might get for him, just because, getting rid of the 3 goalies might give them a better shot of making the playoffs. That's not what they're thinking about right now.
Yeah, the part where I kind of scratch my head as I'm literally scratching my eye is that you have to think, okay, how often is it that teams in playoff contention, like this year's playoff landscape, how often is it that teams that should be there aren't there, and they really have the big issue is the goaltending issues. Like, for example, like a couple months, it's not so much anymore because a winning streak could fix anything, but look at Edmonton. You take a look at Carolina. Another name that's been floated out there is Toronto. We'll throw them in the ring. You could even throw New Jersey in there. So how often is it that, there's 4 teams that goaltending is just going completely sideways for them, and that you'd have to think whether those teams end up in the playoffs or not, they're aware that these issues are still going to exist. They're going to rectify that, you would think, in the offseason.
That's why I wouldn't surprise me. Kent Hughes waits till the offseason to make a trade. And the other thing that could happen, a team with a number 1 goalie gets injured before the trade deadline, and a team's desperate that they just need some kind of a veteran goalie to fill that role, even on a temporary basis. Jake Allen might be that guy. So it's, people are criticizing Canadiens over a 3 goalie system, and I understand, and I've mentioned this before, I think, on the podcast. You can disagree with decisions that Kent Hughes makes, but he has an explanation for why he's doing them. And explanations make sense. Like, so if you can disagree and say it's crazy, but if you listen to his reason why he's continuing with 3 goalies, you can go, okay, maybe I still disagree with you and think it's not the right decision, but I understand where you're coming from in making that decision.
So let's talk a little bit more. Let's move off the 3 goalies because I feel like it makes everyone's head spin.
Yeah, and it's going to continue. I mean, it's going to continue, I think, at least until March 8th, which is the trade deadline, and possibly longer. So just Habs fans, it is what it is, as players like to say.
Yep. And that was, I believe, Claude Julien's favorite line.
Yeah.
So let's jump on to another subject. Let's talk a little bit about Kent Hughes' press conference. Most noteworthy thing or things to come out of that for you.
Well, no, I asked him the question about the 100-point player or point per game player, right? They haven't had a point per game player since Kovalev. They haven't had a 100-point player since Mats Naslund. And I basically said, how important is that in today's NHL? Do you need that? And, you look at the Leafs this year. I saw somebody tweeted today that Austin Matthews could score 70 goals this season, and the Leafs might not make the playoffs. It's sort of, So Kent Hughes gave the answer during the news conference. And then about maybe 25 minutes after the news conference was over, I got a text from him. And he said, you got a couple of minutes. And so I met with him, and he just wanted to expand on the answer he gave me. Because in the news conference, each reporter was limited to 1 question, right? And it was limited to 20 minutes, the news conference. When it started, they said it's 20 minutes. So he couldn't, he was trying to accommodate, answer as many questions as possible, and sort of as quickly as possible, too, so more reporters could get unanswered. But so when I met with him afterwards, then I wrote a column about it, and he sort of expanded on it. And he said, look at the Boston Bruins when they won the Cup in 2011. He said, you know who their leading scorer was? It was Milan Lucic. He had 62 points. So when St. Louis won the Stanley Cup, they didn't have a point per game player. When LA won the Stanley Cup twice, they didn't have a point per game player. So he basically said, if a player like a Matthews or one of those, or Nylander before he signed, he says, if someone like that became available through a trade or free agency, and he said it rarely happens. He said, yeah, we'd be interested. We'd look into it. He says, we have assets. We're going to have more cap flexibility moving forward. But he said that doesn't happen that often. And he says, if you're lucky and you get the number 1 pick when a Connor Bedard is there, you get that 100-point guy drops right in your lap, right? It's just by the luck of the draw. The Canadiens, unfortunately, the year they got the number 1 pick, it wasn't Connor Bedard. There wasn't Nathan McKinnon. There wasn't that elite, undisputed superstar player available with the number 1 pick. And they took Yuri Slafkovsky. And Hughes also made another good point to me. He says, look, it's not like our coaches playing a trap system and trying to win games 2-1. They're playing an open system. That's one of the reasons why there's breakdowns when they play against the Ottawa. He says, we want to play an offensive style of hockey. They just, and people have criticized them for, drafting David Reinbacher last year at number 5 as a defenseman when they need help up front. And I've said, I would have probably taken Ryan Leonard. That's a guy I thought he would fit more into their plans. But Reinbacher's a right-hand shot. right-hand shot defensemen are hard to find. They figured they don't really have that moving forward, so they took him. And Hughes said, we also took 3 forwards the previous year with their first 3 picks. And then they took Lane Hudson, an offensive-minded defenseman, with their 4th pick. So again, another example of how you can disagree with stuff that Kent Hughes is doing, but he's not a dummy. He's a smart guy. He's a smart hockey guy. He's been around a long time. He has a plan, and just the fact that he wanted to expand on it because he wasn't, I don't want to, happy is the right word, but he didn't have enough time to give the answer he wanted to give during the news conference, so he wanted to follow up on it. And what he told me afterwards, that it's true. They're not playing a trapping system. It's true they did draft 3 forwards the year before. It's true they did draft an offensive defenseman in Lane Hudson, and it's true that he has a lot of prospects and a lot of draft picks moving forward. That if that 100-point guy somehow became available on the market as a free agent or through a trade, he would be able to make that kind of deal to bring him here. But again, he said that doesn't happen very often, so he's not holding his breath to get that guy.
Well, it's he's not a 100-point player, but his name was thrown out in the rumor mill after, as of last week. The Trevor Zegras is the hot name. Now, I'm not going to start saying let's formulate trades. However, what I find interesting is the reaction that a lot of people have when a name like this comes to be, because he's been, he's had an injury-riddled season, along with being snake bitten. But I'll take 2 years worth of sample size, being his rookie season and his second season over, however many games he played this year. Everyone has a down year. It happens.
Yeah.
What puzzles me is that the reaction of Habs fans, surprised, they're split. It's either, yes, let's throw everything we can at Anaheim to get him, or get that guy a million miles away from my team, ship him to Antarctica. I don't want him anywhere near Montreal. I just find it interesting because the biggest argument against it is everyone wants against the trade is everyone wants the first overall pick this year, every year. So this year it's Macklin Celebrini. So I went to look, and the biggest argument against Trevor Zegras is, he's not big, he's flashy, he's this, he's that, he's got a couple highlights, but he's not going to do anything much. Macklin Celebrini is the exact same measurements on height and weight as Trevor Zegras, yet Habs fans would welcome him with open arms and celebrate the fact they'd be partying in the streets that they got the first overall pick. I don't know. I think it's interesting that, this offensive talent is reportedly out there and nobody wants to give anything up for him.
Well, as you say, 6 foot, 185, 23 goals each of the last 2 seasons. He's only got 4 goals this season, but the offensive talent's obviously there. Anybody who's watched him play. He's also good friends with Cole Caulfield. And he's also 22 years old. He's right in that age group that Kent Hughes is just all the guys. Look down that roster. 3/4 of the team are 20, 21, 22, 23 years old. He's got all that group in the same age group. I think that's part of why there's such a brotherhood in the locker room. These guys get along so well. They're all basically around the same age, similar interests, similar stages in their life. And he would definitely fit right into that group really well. And as I said, a friend of Cole Caulfield, as I mentioned earlier, that Kent Hughes has assets. He's got 22 draft picks over the next 2 years, and as he said, in a perfect world, he's not using all of those, right? He's going to be dealing some of those draft picks away. You only have so many contracts you can sign with the team also. So, if indeed Zegras is available and becomes available, and that's a player that Kent Hughes likes and would like to add, he is in a position to do something to get him, right? He has a lot to offer, and that's when people are saying, why are they continuing with this 3 goalie system? Well, why are they doing that? Well, maybe it's you make a trade and you're going to take Jake Allen with the trade also, or that's part of the deal, or you're going to, there's so many, he doesn't rush into anything, Kent Hughes. He's very, very patient. And if indeed Zegras is available and he's being shopped around, and if Hughes has interest in him, and I'd be surprised if he didn't. Zegras is the type of player who fits into the type of game the Canadiens want to play. As I mentioned earlier, they're not looking to play a trapping defensive style of game. They want to play an offensive game. Marty St. Louis wants his players to have freedom to do what they can do. And Zegras is one of those players that could probably flourish with Marty St. Louis as a coach. as we've seen with other players that have come in here, other offensively skilled players. So it would make sense. And I mean, to me, if I'm Kent Hughes, that's a player I'd really be interested in bringing in here, because I think he would fit really well in what they're trying to build.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, because I find it very interesting. The more you see people like talk about it, to me, it's a no-brainer. You know, what is this team bereft of? Offensive talent. And well, this guy is all the talent in the world that you could want.
And as I mentioned before, Hughes isn't looking to build that team with that. I mean, he'd love to have a 100-point guy, but that's not.
Of course,
you realize how hard. Like, he'd rather, if he had a choice, he'd rather have 5 or 6 guys that can score 20, 25 goals, right, and have a balanced offensive attack, all playing under the system Marty St. Louis plays. You'd have 3 lines that could score goals, which is probably better than having that one guy who's a 100-point guy moving forward. So it makes sense to me for a lot of reasons. Whether it will happen, we'll see. But again, it's why Kent Hughes is patient. Like, maybe in the off season, that's when that trade is easier to make than it is before the trade deadline.
Right. And, like, I don't know, I'm not going to pretend to know Anaheim's organizational depth at defenseman, other than, they have, he was on Team Canada, Olin Zellweger. He was, other than him, I really don't know their organizational depth at defense. So what do the Canadiens have a lot of?
Yeah.
A ton of defensemen that are just not, they're a lot of them have proven they're NHL quality.
And they've also David Reinbacher, number 5 overall pick, right-hand shot. I'm not saying they're going to trade David Reinbacher, but it's possible. I mean, Kent Hughes is open. He always says, I'm open to basically anything or whatever's going to make this team better moving forward.
Well, I'm sure, a couple months ago, if you had asked the Philadelphia Flyers, and they would give you the what's the word I'm looking for here? The political answer, because obviously they knew behind closed doors on, are you going to trade Cutter? Can you envision a world where you're trading Cutter Gauthier? They're probably going to say, hell no. Things happen. Things happen in the NHL. I love when a player like this is on the market, because it obviously sparks this type of debate, and it's very interesting to see different perspectives. I think the Canadiens would be crazy to not kick the tires on Trevor Zegras if he was truly available.
Yeah, and again, going back to Kent Hughes, being patient with the 3 goalies and willing to wait till the offseason if he has to. Some of the worst moves NHL general managers make are at the trade deadline, moves, and on July 1st, free agency. Right? There's two deadlines where guys are you got to do something now. You got to do something now.
Yeah,
and more often than not, I would say, probably more than 50% of the time, I think those things don't work out well. I mean, there's a lot of bad trades on July 1st. There's a lot of bad trades. I mean, look at the Canadiens got a 1st-round pick for Ben Sherratt at the trade deadline. So and then Sherratt played a few games and left Florida, and he was gone. He went to Detroit. So it's patience. I say patience is always a virtue, and even more so when you're general manager of an NHL team, especially a rebuilding team. I mean, I mentioned, like, this management team went into this season not expecting to make the playoffs if everybody stayed healthy. If Kirby Dach played all 82 games, if Alex Newhook played the whole season, they weren't expecting to make the playoffs, and rightfully so. I mean, I didn't have them picked to make the playoffs before the season with no injuries. I don't know many people who did. My friend Pat Hickey is one of the only people I know who thought they could make the playoffs, and then he changed his mind after Kirby Dach got hurt in the second game. That was pretty quick, but. Again, it's patient, and this is the 2nd full season of a rebuild. And as I said, even next season, I don't know if the goal for the Canadiens management team is to make the playoffs. If they do get in, okay, but they're building for another couple of years down the road. I think year 4 is where you got to start seeing some results. And Kent Hughes has spoken about that before too. As you get further along in the rebuild, the pressure builds on everybody, including him, including Marty St. Louis, including the players. Year 4 now, let's go. This is year 2. Habs fans still have to be patient. Be happy. Habs fans should be happy that the Canadiens. Look at Ottawa. Ottawa's out of it already. It's all they were coming into the season. They were supposed to be, the team. And even though you talk going into the Ottawa game, the Canadiens were only 4 points out of a wild card spot. That's true, but they had like three or four teams ahead of them. So the 4 points is misleading, right? You gotta if there's one team ahead of you and it's 4 points, okay, you win a couple of, you're right there. But when you got 3 or 4 teams you're chasing, those teams are going to win when you win, and it's a tough thing going forward. So, to me, I didn't think the Canadiens would be at 500 at this point in the season with everybody healthy, and they're just hovering around that 500. But missing Doc, missing Newhook, that's why they just they haven't won 3 games in a row all year. You look at Edmonton, I think it's 12 in a row they've won now. Yeah, they don't have to do that. The Canadiens don't. The Canadiens have to work twice as hard probably as the Edmonton Oilers need to work to win a hockey game, right? When you have McDavid and Draisaitl and these guys, it makes it a lot easier to win hockey games when you have that kind of offense, that kind of firepower. And the Canadiens just don't have it. They have, Ken, you spoke about this at the news conference too. Excuse me, again. Yeah, you got fourth liners playing on the third line right now. You got third liners playing on the second line. Their first line is solidified now. But they're playing above where they should be, in my opinion, at this point in the season.
No, I don't think that, especially given the context, because I think it would have been fair to expect a 500 team with a fully healthy team, considering where they were last year, and then you would expect natural progression. I think it would have been a fair thing to assume. This way, the way it's going right now, it's like no chance that they would be 500, but lo and behold,
500 this year with Doc and Newhook and everybody around, and they lost David Savard for 20 games earlier in the season. Also, that had an impact on them. The injuries just keep coming and coming, right? Jordan Harris missed the game. Dvorak's out for the season now, and they haven't lost more than 4 in a row. Last year they had 2 7-game losing streaks, so they've been able. Well, they haven't been able to win 3 in a row. They haven't gone in that total dive where they lose 6, 7, 8 in a row.
Yeah, and I think that's also just a very important thing for the team. Even if they lose 3 in a row, win 1, and lose another 3, it's very important to not slip down that rabbit hole, because that's when the firestorm starts. Yeah,
guys start getting down, and guys start maybe questioning things. And I think the players know that they like the system Marty plays. They like the freedom they have. They know it can work when they're all working together and they're firing on all cylinders. But it's part of, Marty said after the game last night, he says, there's certain games we think we're going to take that next step. And last night was a game, maybe he thought, okay, we're going to get 3 in a row. We're going to go into Boston, 3-game winning streak. Maybe we can carry it on. And then they didn't get it. So he's still waiting for that moment when they do get that 3rd straight win, and maybe a 4th straight win. It can go on a little bit of a run. But again, they got to work so hard to win hockey games. It's tough, and back-to-back games, it's really tough. They played really well in New Jersey, and they were out of gas in Ottawa. I think it's pretty much that simple.
Yeah, and you'd have to think, they're playing against, like you said, Boston on Saturday in Boston. They got to have that game against Ottawa circled. Like, they got embarrassed. They got
embarrassed against San Jose, and they bounced back. And look what they did after San Jose. They played solid games back-to-back against Edmonton and Colorado. And they have a day off today in Boston, so they'll relax, recharge their batteries a bit, get a good night's sleep. And they should be ready to play Saturday against Boston. I'd be surprised. I don't think they'll beat the Bruins in Boston, but I'd be very surprised if we don't get a solid effort from the Canadiens tomorrow night.
And if Canadiens fans want to take solace in anything, for the ones that are impatient still about the rebuild, because, I always see in the comments, and this time it's no different, enough with the rebuild, enough. It's like, you all wanted this.
Fans have said forever, Canadiens fans, we got to rebuild, we got to blow, especially Tony, right? Tony was one of the guys leading it.
He was the number one.
We got to rebuild. Well, you've got a full rebuild, and a full rebuild doesn't mean in year 2 you're a playoff team. It just doesn't. It doesn't. And as I mentioned earlier, you almost don't, as a management, you almost don't want that. Like, you need more high draft picks, right? You got to build through the draft. So, making the playoffs, getting blown out in the first round isn't really the best thing in that management's eyes. I believe that moving forward, like keeping competitive, hanging in there, being in contention, playing meaningful games that the players say, we still have a chance. The players want to win. Players want to get in the playoffs, right? So they want to win. So having that and pushing hard and you don't want to tank. You don't want to be Chicago this year. Imagine if Chicago gets another.
They're even worse. You know what's crazy about Chicago? They're even worse than they were last year, and they were bad last year. They are horrible.
Connor Bedard gone, and so they could get the first pick again next year. But does that mean that they're going to be ahead of the Canadiens in the rebuilding process? Maybe, no guarantee though, right? And again, it's Kent Hughes is trying to build he lived in Boston. Patrice Bergeron was his client. He's seen the Bruins, right? He's seen a lot of Bruins hockey. He's seen how that team has built their team. He's negotiated contracts with the Bruins general managers. He knows, you look at the Bruins, they lose two of their key centers this season, and they just keep rolling along.
No problem.
So that's the team that's the team Kent Hughes wants to build. He wants to build that kind of team. And for a rebuild, I mean, what better franchise to look at than the way the Bruins are in the playoffs every year. They're competitive every year. They lose key guys. It doesn't matter. They just keep rolling along. They built that winning culture in the locker room. Their leaders lead. They just, Chara leads, Bergeron. They keep winning. And that's what Kent Hughes is trying to build. And you're not going to do that in 2 years.
To be fair, if Kent Hughes wanted that, wants to build that type of team, they got a 100-point player in David Pastrnak.
But as he mentioned, they do. Ahead. But when the Bruins won the cup, they didn't have a 100-point player,
right?
And Bergeron was never a point. But Bergeron, the most points he ever had was 79. So, I think it's still I think having a point per game player is important. I think you need to have, especially in today's NHL, I think you need to have a star player. I think that Nick Suzuki can be a point per game player, and Kent Hughes told me that when I talked to him too. If you put him in Tampa with Stamkos and Kucherov, he's a point per game player. Or you put him in Boston, he's probably a point per game player. I mean, Nick Suzuki's a heck of a hockey player, and he could finish this season as a point. If Cole Caulfield keeps scoring the way he's been scoring recently.
Oh yeah.
Suzuki has a chance and Slafkovsky can pick up his game and add some more. There's a chance Suzuki could finish this season as a point per game player on a not very good team. But again, look at the type of team the Bruins have with depth and coaches leave and players leave and they just keep winning, right? They keep winning, and that's what. And Gordon Hughes have said that right from day one. We want a team that's going to be competitive every year, not get in the playoffs one year and maybe the next year. And they're not going with Marc Bergevin's line. Well, we get in the playoffs and anything can happen. Mm-hmm. We want a team that we're in the playoffs, and we're going to make things happen. We're not going to hope anything can happen. We're going to be good enough if we get in the playoffs that we should win, and maybe not win the Stanley Cup, but win a couple of rounds anyway. I mean, it's hard to win the Stanley Cup, as anyone knows. And that's what they're trying to build. And again, for Canadiens fans, to get that kind of depth and that kind of team, it's going to take patience. And going back to Trevor Zegras again, that's why Kent Hughes is building so much of his core around guys that same age group, 21, 22, 23. So 3 years from now, they're 26, 27, and they should be in the prime. They should be in their prime and not so old that they're going to be good for 1 or 2 years and then it's done. At 26, they should have a 3-year period there where they're still on the rise, and then you're going to have younger guys coming up, and that's how you build a team that's successful every year.
And they're oftentimes I make them the butt of every joke, but it could be worse. You want to talk a bad situation that should not be is the Toronto Maple Leafs right now. What is going on over there? When I'm go on Instagram this morning, and this is after a win.
Yeah.
And I see a clip of Brian Hayes, the guy on Overdrive on TSN. He was on with Jay Onright after the game last night, and he's talked about Mitch Marner's comments. Mitch Marner basically saying Leafs fans could say what they want and and we know we're playing good hockey. The media could do whatever. And you want to get pitchforks out for you? Oh my God. Because I love what Brian Hayes said. Leaf fans don't want to be lectured on how to play, on how you're playing, because they're watching you on the ice. Yeah. So Canadiens fans can take solace that, man, it's not the greatest to be a Canadiens fan right now, but man, oh man, imagine being a Toronto Maple Leafs fan and that team missed the playoffs.
In Toronto, there's sort of that history of star players being pampered, right? I remember they had the Muskoka Five there for a while. The guys who the thing was, they just want to finish the season so they can go back to their cottages in Muskoka. They don't really care if they make the playoffs. And now with this, I mean, with Austin Matthews and that core, when it gets to the playoffs, you've seen it over and over and over again. They just sort of, they don't show up. They disappear. When the going gets tough, they disappear. And with the big contract they signed Austin Matthews to and Nylander, I'm thinking, like, if I'm GM of that team, I'm thinking trading one of those guys is probably going to be more valuable than signing them all, because you're going to get a ton for Nylander and you would have got a ton for Matthews, and you could have plugged some of the other holes, some of the problems they have on defense and goaltending and whatnot. But they they got rid of the old GM who was, offense, almost playing a video game, and it still seems to be the same thing. And Brandon Shanahan's still the guy in place, so it's president. But they just seem to think it's almost like they're playing a video game where you got all these offensive guys and we're going to score and we're going to win. And I know someone, former NHL scout, told me one day, he says, well, what happens when you get to the playoffs and someone punches Austin Matthews in the nose? Or what happens when you get to the playoffs and somebody's hacking Nylander every time he's on the ice? Do they still want to play? And the answer has been no. To be brutally honest, once the playoffs get going and you're playing the same team every second night and you got the same guy going up against you and the same guy hacking you and whacking you and maybe punching you in the nose, it's not easy. And for the Leaf top players, they seem to take the easy way out. And those comments are sort of like that too, right? Oh yeah, we're playing great. Well, Toronto hockey fans watch a lot of hockey, and they're not playing that great, right? They're scoring goals, but they can't protect the lead. Their defensive problems. They're not getting good goaltending. Their defense isn't very good, and that's in the salary cap world. Going back to Kent Hughes, he's trying to build a balanced team. The Leafs are not a balanced hockey team, right? They're so top heavy. I mean, you're paying all that money for your forwards and one defenseman. There's not a lot of money left to fill in the other spots you need to fill in the roster.
Well, that's also a huge thing coming up, is that the big talk was, Nylander's probably the odd man out. Well, that changed, obviously. Now it's very clear that it's going to be John Tavares. He's, by the end of his contract, he's going to be 35. He's 33 right now. However, you're still significantly handicapped. You're even more handicapped next year because you got a lot of money being freed up, but all of that is going to Mitch Marner. Not Mitch Marner, William Nylander. And then, the year after that, Mitch Marner's contract is up. And ain't no way in hell he's taken less than William Nylander. I can promise you that.
Yep. And that was the key when Kent Hughes was negotiating with Cole Caulfield, was he's not going to get more than Nick Suzuki. That was, you're not getting more than Nick Suzuki. So talking with his agent, we're not going above there. So look at what Nick Suzuki's making. Your guy's getting less. And it's creating a salary cap structure. And the Leafs salary cap structure is just, out of whack. It really is.
It's unbelievable. And to think that it's even in the realm of possibilities that they can miss the playoffs is just wild to me. And they're just going to have a rough time going forward, because it's like, you look at their salary right now, it's just wow. Anyways, they better hope for Brad Treliving's sake that the salary cap has a couple bumps before it's time for that contract.
And they've got that. Leafs have a lot of no movement clauses in contracts with guys too, which really ties the GM's hands.
Yeah, it's just like you toss them out thinking
you get a no trade clause, and you get a no trade clause, and you get a no trade clause.
It's funny because it's a classic GM move of going, I'm just going to toss these contracts around because it's probably not going to be me that has to deal with them anyways. Yeah. So that's
at least when Treliving came in, it was like, okay, there's going to be a new style, and then
right.
But it seems to be the same old thing.
Yeah, it's wild what's going on in Toronto right now. Back in Montreal, where things are not are not so rosy, but they're also not as doom and gloom as that situation could be. Listen, his name is going to be starting to be circulating more and more with the coming weeks, with the trade deadline approaching, is Sean Monahan. Rumors floating around about him, and I'm excited to see, because listen, this is what Kent Hughes does. It's not inconceivable that listen, I don't know any forwards other than Trevor Zegras, frankly, that are out there, but he gets Canadiens have a top 10 pick. They get a second first round pick in Trevor Zegras. Probably that top 10 pick wouldn't be moved, but they got 2 first round picks the year after, one from Calgary. Package a bunch of those, and Bob's your uncle. There's Trevor Zegras. That's to me is something that would be Kent Hughes-esque. But Sean Monahan, what's the
with Monahan? The interesting stuff coming out of the news conference, and one of the things was Hughes' response. It was Arpon Basu asked him about Monahan, and there was a Darren Drugger reported that when Monahan signed with the Canadiens, he was given assurances that he would be moved at the trade deadline somewhere else. And Hughes did nothing to shoot that down. He didn't tiptoe around it a bit, but he basically said, Sean Monahan wanted to play in Montreal. He likes it in Montreal, and he really does. He also wanted to play somewhere where he knew he was going to play a lot, or be an opportunity to play a lot, to prove that he can stay healthy, which he has so far this season. And if everything goes well and he signs here, he plays really well, he stays healthy at the trade deadline, Kent Hughes would trade him to a contending team, somewhere where you'd have a chance to win a Stanley Cup. So, the Darren Drugger reported, and following that, Sean Monahan will not be with the Canadiens after the trade deadline. I think that came out pretty clear from what Kent Hughes was saying. There's always a possibility he could re-sign him again in the summer, although that doesn't usually happen very often with guys that leave through a trade at the trade deadline. But the way Monahan's playing, you think that he'd get a first-round pick for him. And if you can get a first-round pick for Sean, you're crazy not to trade him. I mean, I love Sean Monahan as a hockey player. He's a heck of a hockey player. He's got a lot of mileage on that body. He's stayed healthy this season, knock on wood. So has Brendan Gallagher. But those injuries take a toll moving forward. So from a rebuilding team, I'm talking about those guys 22, 23 years old. Monahan, by the time they're really into this rebuild and at a point where they're going to be competitive every year, he's 29 now, right? So he's going to be 32 when the Canadiens are in this. And, Brendan Gallagher now is 31, and 32 is old for a hockey player, for any hockey player. But one who's had all the injuries that Monahan's had. And again, I love Sean Monahan's a great hockey player, great person, great teammate. I mean, look what he did with Joshua Roy. He slowed down on that play because he wanted Joshua Roy to get his first goal. He said that after the game. He knew he was behind him. He knew once you get that first goal, you get that monkey off your back in the NHL as a young kid. And he said it. He had a 2-on-1, and he knew he was doing everything he could to make sure Joshua Roy scored his first goal. And that speaks volumes about Sean Monahan as a teammate and a person. So any team that would get him in a trade would be lucky to have that guy in their locker room, especially if he can stay healthy. He can play center, he can play wing, he can play first line, he can play fourth line, he can play in the power play, he can have him kill penalties. He's just great in the locker room, a real role model for young players. And as much as Canadian fans love Sean Monahan, I love watching Sean Monahan play hockey. I love just focusing on him when he's on the ice because he always makes the smart move. It seems he hardly ever makes a mistake. But if you can get a first-round pick from him in this rebuilding process, Kent Hughes would be crazy not to make that trade.
You know what?
I think there is that gentleman's agreement that he will trade. Yeah. Now that came out pretty clear. There is a gentleman's agreement that I'll sign with you. I want to play in Montreal, but in a perfect world, if I stay healthy and I play really well at the trade deadline, will you move me to a contending team?
Mm-hmm. And if there's one thing Canadiens fans love more than Sean Monahan, Canadiens fans love their first-round picks. Love it. Love it. It's, when the time comes and there's a bit of a dead period in news, this is going to happen really after the trade deadline. I'm gonna have you back on with in a round table with someone. I don't know who it will be, but we are going to talk a lot about the value of which a first-round pick holds. And the way I just got thinking about this is that I'm sitting at the bar against when the Canadiens are playing against the New Jersey Devils, and we're just a couple friends talking, sitting there talking about hockey, and my friend says to me, he goes, "Would you max offer sheet?" And we were just talking about the trade that the Toronto Raptors made for Pascal Siakam, where they traded 3 first-round picks, or the Pacers traded them 3 first-round picks. He goes, "Would you max offer sheet Elias Pettersson?" And just to have that discussion with our comment section chiming in, I feel like would be very, very fun, a very fun topic to have, because, hey, once the trade deadline passes, we can't talk potential trade for on hand 3 goalie systems and whatnot for 40 minutes. So hey,
well, we can't talk about what he might do in the offseason if they still have the 3 goalies.
That we can do. That we can certainly do. But we're gonna save the offer sheet talk for post trade deadline. But Stu, I just want to thank you again for joining me on a Friday night, as you always do. It's very much appreciated. And stay warm and have yourself a great weekend.
Always a pleasure.
That's Stu Cowan. I'm Matt Ohayon. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next time.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaVie.tv. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.